What kind of evidence would prove God is real? Two apologists get together to tell atheists how dishonest they are, while only proving the same about themselves. Get ready for this. This is going to be weird. I came across this video with David Wood, who actually runs a channel called Acts 17 Apologetics, and he wants to tell us that atheists are dishonest. Richard Dawkins is a liar, all the while hiding the very simple fact that he's got nothing and he knows it. And that's where the religious play these stupid games. They look even worse if they don't. So let's see David make a fool of himself and why, as always, religious apologetics remain completely unconvincing.
So next question is from Stickman Sam. He says, David, as a former atheist, what's your advice for Christians on how to share the gospel with atheists?
Don't. It's not worth it. Most atheists know more about your silly book than you do, and that's why they're atheists. So, in all honesty, the question is more about either how to find really stupid, ignorant atheists who've never run into your brand of theological absurdity, or how to counter the atheist's superior knowledge about the contents of your holy book. The latter is probably more worthwhile than the former, but it's also a question that the religious have no good answers to. So let's see where this goes.
Step number one, and I don't think lots of Christians do this, is trying to figure out what level of skepticism this person has, right? Like some people are just, they haven't heard a good argument for theism, but if you gave them one, they would, think about it and consider it and decide whether it's a good argument.
Which is true of virtually all atheists, at least that I'm aware of. All most of us want is evidence. The problem here, and this is what will absolutely not be addressed, I'm sure, is that the religious have no evidence. They have nothing of value to say to the skeptic, and therefore, as I'm pretty sure this guy is going to try, the religious then pretend that it isn't reacting to their lack of proof for your claims, but that it's some grand conspiracy to ignore the obvious truth of their faith. This happens all the time, because they can't accept that anyone has a good reason not to believe them, so they have to make excuses.
And others, they've adopted a methodology that is actually impervious to evidence.
It can't be impervious to evidence because you don't actually have any. This is just rationalizing your way around the problem. You have things that simply are not convincing, and then, to explain why no one is convinced, you pretend that the problem isn't your evidence, it's the other guy. And it doesn't work that way.
Right. Like Dawkins recently admitted this. He was being interviewed, and he's asking what would qualify as evidence for the existence of God. And he said, years ago I would have said, God writing his name in the sky or something like this, or a miracle or something like this. But I've come to realize that there's nothing that God could do that I couldn't just say aliens did it.
And that might be true, and he's being honest, and he's probably right. Because when we're talking about what could conceivably happen if we imagine amazingly advanced alien technology, can we say that only a God could do anything that we could see? I don't really think so, and the farther advanced we get, the more we see that we can do, or can conceivably do in the future. These are things that, to someone from, say, the Middle Ages, would be proof that we're gods. But we're not. So there's really nothing that would be absolute proof that something out there is an actual God. But there are things that are so far beyond our experiences that I would at least be willing to accept that any being that could do that is godlike, to say the least. You could make a galaxy disappear and then reappear. You could write things in the stars by moving actual stars without consequences. Violate known universal physical laws on a grand scale. I would accept that whatever could do that was amazingly powerful at the very least. So when do you think you're going to see some of that?
Right. If God arranged the stars to say something specifically to us, I could say, well, maybe they're powerful enough aliens who have done this. And so Christians need to understand the level of skepticism of the person that they're dealing with.
No, they need to understand that they really have nothing at all to present. Because if you ask me what I will accept, and I give you an example like I just did, and it doesn't really matter what example that might be, it isn't like you're going to produce that for your God. It doesn't matter what my answer is, because you still haven't proven anything. So what difference does it make what answer I might give you? And this really goes for anything. If you want to know what would prove magic to me, no matter what answer I give you, you couldn't produce it, so why does it matter? Or if we want to talk about aliens or a flat earth, I mean, how would Scientologists prove Xenu to me? Well, it doesn't matter what conditions I give, because they've got no evidence. So this is just shifting the burden to the skeptic, because these people are sitting there with their hands empty.
Because if you're talking to a person to a person who's saying, give me evidence,
Right.
but they have a methodology that doesn't allow any evidence,
Right.
you're just wasting your time there until you deal with that issue. So lots of times, if it's an atheist, and I think he might be the variety of atheists who has made has constructed a methodology that doesn't allow any kind of evidence.
Yep. I just did a recent video on that, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I normally start. I normally start. They say, give me evidence for the existence of God, and I go, okay, first, give me evidence that you exist.
I can do that, and I've seen this kind of thing before, so I'll let him go ahead and make a fool of himself first, but this is really a bad place to go.
Because I don't want to be talking to a non-existent person here.
Right.
Then why are you? I mean, if you think that you are. And this goes for solipsists as well. I'll run into people who say that they're the only ones that exist, that all of reality is being generated by their mind or some such silly nonsense like that. And I'll ask why in the world they're sitting there talking to themselves. Because if that's really what they believe, it makes no rational sense whatsoever for them to get on a non-existent computer and log into the non-existent internet to talk to people that they're convinced aren't real. So the very fact that they're there, the very fact that they're having a conversation in the first place, proves that they really don't believe what they purport to believe. And this guy's question is no better.
And then they say, it's usually typing, right? They're sending me messages, and then they type back, what do you mean? Obviously I exist because I'm sending you a message. And so I type back and I go, well, yeah, there's a message, but I mean, it could be monkeys mindlessly pounding on a keyboard. Obviously, if DNA can form on its own, some monkeys can type this sort of message, especially with all these misspellings and so on. And so, I type a message back like that.
But that really doesn't get you anywhere, because by sending messages, you are getting evidence that the other person is real. Yes, you can dismiss it by thinking it might be monkeys, but this is evidence, not proof. And the more different kinds of evidence you receive, the more you ought to accept the proposition, at least provisionally. Keep in mind that the religious can't provide any evidence of any kind for their gods. This guy is desperately trying to keep from having to present anything because he knows he has nothing. And that's why he's playing this game, trying to rationalize that whoever he's talking to won't accept anything, therefore he doesn't have to provide anything because he really has nothing.
And if we keep going back and forth and they keep giving me reasons to believe that they exist, and I dismiss them, and then eventually they'll say something like, well, I'll come to your city and I'll show myself. And I'm going, how will I know I'm not dreaming? How will I know I'm not in the Matrix? How will I know that I'm not a brain in a vat that some mad scientist is making me think that you're appearing to me?
Well, my response to that is I'd be more than happy to whack you in the head with a baseball bat until you either admit that I'm real or you lose consciousness due to blunt force trauma. Want to experiment? I'm game.
How can I know? In other words, I'm becoming a hyper skeptic, but applying it to them to show them, hey, this is what you do with God.
Right.
Except it's not, because I'm not asking you to prove God. I'm asking you to provide direct, objectively verifiable evidence that God exists. I'm asking you to show me why you think God is real. I'm asking you to provide anything at all, and I will evaluate it to see if it stands up to the light of reason. And you know something? It never does. That's if they have anything to present at all, which usually they don't.
This is what you do when I give an argument for God. So why am I going to give you an argument for the existence of God when all you're going to do is play skeptic? And I can do that too. And if I play skeptic like you do, you can't even prove to me that you exist.
Except I don't give a damn if you believe I exist. I didn't come pounding on your door demanding you come to a building to hear all about my existence. I'm not trying to convince you that I'm real. You, however, are trying to convince me that your imaginary friend is real, and therefore it rests entirely on your shoulders to prove it. This is just a tactic to get out from under that responsibility.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is the point there is to show them that if that's their methodology, they've got a flawed methodology.
No, it isn't a flawed methodology. You're just spouting a straw man. You're shifting the burden of proof. You know on some level that your beliefs are totally intellectually vapid, and therefore you have to twist the situation so you don't look like a complete fool. And guess what? It's not working.
Now, if at the end of all that they say, no, I'm not like that. I'm not like that, and it becomes clear in the discussion that they're not like that, then I would move forward.
Move forward with what? What evidence are you actually going to present? Because I've had discussions with theists who have tried this exact tactic, and I've responded and told them exactly what would convince me, and they had nothing else to say. They have nothing to present. Why did we just waste time hammering out what evidence I would accept if they have nothing to say of value? Because I don't think they really have a response to someone who says, well, this is what it'll take. Now what? Because they can't meet the bar on any rational standard. What do they say then? Mostly they just run away. That's why nobody ever succeeded in the James Randi challenge. Because when faced with a very rational standard of evidence for a claim, the Woo-meisters inevitably fail. But I bet nobody ever walked away from the James Randi challenge admitting they were wrong. Because this isn't about being right, it's about believing for emotional reasons.
But if it becomes clear in the conversation that they are these hyper-skeptical people, I'm not gonna move beyond the phase of, you've got a problem in your methodology,
right?
And why in the world would you be asking me for evidence when you've made it completely irrelevant?
Right.
Why would you ask me what it would take to convince me if you can't come anywhere remotely close? This isn't a tactic. This is a dodge. It's a way to keep from looking like a complete idiot when that's all your position allows you to be. And I trust no one is surprised.
Right? Yeah. Like I don't walk around going, show me a square circle. Why? Right. I don't even believe that a square circle is possible. So I'm not going to be going around asking people for evidence of it. Right?
Sure, but there's no one out there standing on soapboxes saying that square circles are real. If there was, then you'd be perfectly justified to ask that they prove their claims. Newsflash for you, Skippy. There are millions and millions of people out there that believe that this God thing of yours is real. There are thousands of churches claiming that it's real every single Sunday. There are tons of apologists on YouTube claiming that they can prove God. But when it comes right down to it, they all fail miserably. I'm not sure why we're supposed to think you're going to be any better.
But these guys, they've made their worldview immune to evidence that conflicts with their worldview, and then they ask for evidence against it. And so it's like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's really sad watching people making videos explaining why they fail so spectacularly and pretending that it's not their fault. Of course it is. Whose fault is it? They believe things for which there is no good evidence, and realizing that they have no good evidence to do it, they shuck and jive and try to dance their way around their intellectual responsibilities because this isn't about facts, it's about faith. On some level, I really do think they know that they've lost, that they ought to have more than they do, that people aren't going to take them seriously, but that's why they pretend to have some super secret knowledge that they're only going to share with you if they deem you worthy to receive it. And the simple fact is, their God Emperor has no clothes and doesn't actually exist. And they aren't intellectually honest enough to admit it. They just play games to hopefully keep people from realizing just how rationally bankrupt they are. It's not just these two, it's all of them. It's 100% of these people. Every single apologist on the planet. because they have all failed to meet their burden of proof, to stand up to their intellectual and rational responsibilities to only believe things for which they have good reasons to do so, and they couldn't care less. Instead, you get apologists like this who, the second that you see what their game is, you realize that that's all that it is. A game, a dishonest sham. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's just standard operating procedure for the religious. Pathetic, isn't it?